Welcome back to another episode of PrimeTime eSports. I hope you're looking forward to another great show. As week one of the LCS is under wraps, the league was thrown a bit topsy-turvy as some of the more established teams in the league seem to struggle, while the newer names in the scene seem to shine brightly in their first time on the LCS stage. These are the standings after the first week, with FlyQuest and Cloud9 on top of the NA LCS, followed by a six-way tie for third between CLG, TSM, Immortals, Team Dignitas, Team Liquid, and Phoenix One, and at the bottom of the table is Poor, Echo Fox, and Team Envious. Not a very action-packed week two for North America, as the most anticipated matchups of the weekend will both be played Friday, with FlyQuest facing off against CLG, followed by the TSM taking on Team Dignitas, while Saturday and Sunday will be spent breaking up that six-way tie, and hopefully we will have a more concrete understanding of where these teams fall by Sunday. We're going to come back to the desk where I am joined by Andy Jesperson and making his triumphant return, Mike Binjahlan. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Good.
Doing fantastic. Ready to be back at it.
More importantly, we're going to ignore you, Mohammed. More importantly, how did you enjoy the first week of LCS?
I thought it was very chaotic, which is not something that is surprising to me. You know, a lot of the teams are sort of figuring out what the meta is going to be for LCS specifically and how they're going to sort of cooperate and work together. So not too much out of the ordinary there. I do expect things to sort of smooth out as the weeks go on.
I thought it was great. It was kind of went along the path that we expected. Didn't really see a whole lot of Camille, Rengar, LeBlanc. When we did see those champions, even Katarina, we saw a lot of dominance from them. And I think going forward, like Mohammed said, we're gonna have to wait and see what the teams will find.
Speaking of the new meta, let's go ahead and go straight to the white elephant in the room. The 10-ban system, how do you think teams have begun to adapt to it, and which teams have used it best so far?
I think each team has shown individual strengths and weaknesses while using it. Some of those have been pointed out by casters, and others I think people won't notice until we get more used to the system. I think teams have used it specifically well when after the first set of picks, the second bans come in, and they'll specifically target one role that the other team hasn't picked up that they have.
Mama, how do you like it from a fan's perspective?
I think it's really entertaining, but they sort of expected that at Riot, I feel, when they implemented the 10 bans in LCS. It makes it really entertaining. It's not longer than it was when it was just 3 on each side, because they adjusted the time so that each pick and each ban are a little bit shorter. So yeah, overall it's pretty entertaining. You see a lot of new picks like Singed in the top lane, which was pretty interesting in week 1. But the bans overall have been pretty similar.
Talk about future solo queue hell, but we're going to go ahead and get into our highlight matchups of North America. First off is our match of the week, talking FlyQuest versus CLG, gentlemen. FlyQuest coming out extremely strong in the first week, high back up to his old tricks, starting off at 4-1 with 2-0. And look at that goal difference, 973, not the best, but they still control the game better than other teams. And also we have CLG struggling in their first week in the LCS, but they've always been a slow team. Mohammed, tell me, what are you looking for out of this match?
Okay, so I'm kind of apprehensive to say anything about FlyQuest at the moment. I know the roster is mostly old C9 players. You have Lemonation in the bot lane, you have Balls top, and then High in the mid lane, sort of doing the shot calling and commanding the team. Overall, the team looks fairly strong for week 1. Wasn't really expecting a lot out of them, and I don't think the casters were expecting a lot either. But as far as against CLG, it's really a toss-up. Because right now, I don't know if CLG will be able to shape up this soon into the season and what the team is going to be like.
Andy, what do you think CLG has to do to win this game against FlyQuest? And what parts of their games do they have to improve specifically? We know Darshan hasn't been a big help already from the outset of it, but Huhi actually has stepped up his game seemingly, right?
Yeah, Huhi looked great. He got the Aurelion Sol pick and showed out on it. I think they were unable to close out that game despite the massive lead that they had. But I think that really what CLG needs is to unlock Darshan. With this primarily tank meta in the top lane, I think it opens up a lot of picks like Darius, like Fiora, these split pushers that just obliterate anything, particularly tanks. And I think that if they're able to get Darshan on one of these hard carried picks and get him a kill or two in the early game, he can drag them to a victory.
I think Darshan on a Camille would be a scary sight indeed. But we'll see if Zix can find a way to unlock that potential. I want to get you guys' prediction for this game. We're going to go Andy first. Who do you think is going to win this game, and how many games do you think the series goes to?
I'm still a FlyQuest doubter, so I'm going to go CLG, and I'm going to say 3 games because, FlyQuest came out strong 2-0 opening week, so maybe I should lay back a little bit. So I'll say they pick up a game, but I think CLG is going to come out on top. I think Darshan will find his rhythm. I think Aframu and Stixxay will bring out something interesting in the bot lane, and yeah.
Mohamed?
I'm more leaning towards either it being a huge crash and burn for CLG or a really triumphant comeback. So it's either going to be 2-0 or 0-2 for them. If they find their footing this early into the season and they're able to work as a cohesive unit, FlyQuest shouldn't be that difficult for them to overcome. But if they're still having communication problems and picking problems and performance problems, then FlyQuest should make quick work of them.
And I think that I'm going to go, and usually the host's opinion doesn't really matter that much, but I'm going to go with FlyQuest. I picked them last week to win. I think they're going to pull out again. I think Hai has been looking amazing, especially on Corki. Went 10-0-1 on him, played 3 games straight. And I think the whole team together, outside the balls, has been playing like the old Cloud9 that we're used to seeing. But we're going to move on to TSM versus Dignitas. TSM, a team that started out slow as well, but not used to starting out. So look at that KDA, just 0.90, something that we're not used to seeing from this TSM roster, and also down by 1,000 gold, like 1,500 gold down versus this new Dignitas squad who looked really well in their first week, got 1-1, but both series were extremely close.
I think that we should give TSM a break. I don't mean it like that, but they did play Cloud9, who, coming out of week 1, is the best team in North America. I don't think there's anyone who's going to dispute that. And they played okay versus C9. C9 looked really together, despite having a larger role shifted in the offseason. So I think TSM definitely has some questions they need to answer, but I don't think that this week 1 defeat versus C9 is really as big as it's being made to be.
And I want to actually ask you both, Mom, before you go into your response, what seems to be TSM's biggest problem? Is it Wild Turtle? Is it the shot calling? Is it the pick ban phase? What is their biggest mountain to climb right now?
I feel like TSM sort of started in a similar fashion in last season during the spring split, where they sort of start off slow. It's as if they haven't found their footing yet, and they're sort of going through the motions, trying to figure out what the team dynamic is going to be, especially with Turtle back in the ADC position. I heard that the shot calling is sort of different for the team now. Bjergsen is picking up a majority of it, as opposed to Doublelift and Bjergsen sort of balancing that out. That being said, I noticed a lot of strange play from Bjergsen in the mid lane, especially in the game against Immortals. He wasn't really playing how Bjergsen usually plays. So maybe that's like beginning of the season jitters for him, but I do expect him to start performing at a better consistency.
And you can expect also some of those might be the added shot calling responsibility. Now that he is, I don't want to latch on to rumors, but I did hear that he is almost like the sole shot caller on the team right now. But let's focus on Dignitas, and let's focus even more on this new rookie in Lod and how he has impacted this team. Guys, how has Lod been, like, what has his impact on his team been, as the AD carry role isn't as impactful as people want to think, but it seems like he's still having a very, very big role on this squad?
I think ADC is a role where the differences between players are very minor, but they end up having a huge impact. Small mechanical decisions will make a big difference between 80 carries. And I think that Lodge showed us last year that he can do a lot with a little. And now that he's got a team that can give him a lot, he's showing us what he can do. I mean, week 1, he must have had close to 10 ash arrows thrown at him, and maybe 20% of those hit. His flash timing was impeccable. His CS was solid. Clearly has a mastery of the lane and the meta right now, and surprisingly good synergy with Xpecial, who I also think deserves some of that credit.
Now, Mohammed, how do you feel these Korean imports of Someday and Chaser have affected the team as well? You know, Reginald actually came out and said he doesn't believe in teams importing Koreans, that they do it wrong and that it hurts them more than it helps. But right now it seems to be helping the team a lot, as we saw Someday actually taking on more of a carry role in these early games.
Yeah. So as far as Someday and Chaser are concerned, I sort of agree with Reginald in some sense that having 2 Koreans in the top lane that don't really speak English that well could be a problem for team communication. I can see why he's sort of hesitant in sort of saying that it doesn't equal, imports don't equal a better team, is what he was trying to say. That being said, the team overall, their skill level seems pretty high, and if they're able to work together consistently and well, like what they showed in week 1, they're going to be a top of the table team, and that's just how it's going to go for them.
I want to add something. I think that when it comes to this sort of layout where you have primarily English-speaking bot lane and then primarily Korean-speaking top side of the map, I think the 2 things that are most important is A, Keen is a catalyst for this team. He brings everyone together because he can speak both languages. And B, the fact that all the Korean-speaking players on Team Dignitas have put in the effort. Like they said on the broadcast, they're learning English 12 hours a week, which is a lot of time to take away from practice. But I think it's important, especially as a long-term investment. And it shows that Dignitas is interested in not only winning the Spring Split, but also going to Worlds.
That also is a commitment we haven't really heard of from Korean imports in North America. In other regions, maybe, but in North America, it's usually the other team accommodating them in some form. That is a very interesting point, Annie. But I want to get you guys' predictions. What do these 2 teams have to do to win this game? And also, who do you think will take it?
So between these 2, I have to say that I'm sort of leaning more in favor of Dignitas just because the team's performance has been really good, especially the players that don't seem to be highlighted that much, which are Xpecial and Laud in the bot lane. Those 2 are actually, with the disappearance of Double Lift, probably top 2, I would say, for NA bot lanes, with the exception of Afro and Stixay, which I still think are number 1 despite performance
Bias is just flowing out of your
problems.
ears.
Whatever helps you sleep.
But yeah, I think they'll be a great bot lane. Laud has shown that he's a great ADC, and with Xpecial, who's a really consistent, high-performing support, they can do great things together.
Despite his horrendous bias, I have to agree on the bot lane point. I do think Dignitas is stronger on that side of the map, but I think one thing that Dignitas has shown is that they're not capable of overcoming extremely large leads consistently. When they get behind, they seem a little bit rustled, and I think that since TSM has had a larger portion of their team together for longer, I suspect that they will have more experience on how to snowball those leads and how to deal with getting back from behind. So I actually think TSM will win this series. I think it'll be 2-1. Should be a great series.
All right, 2-1. So we all think it's going to go the distance then, as far as series-wise.
Yeah.
All right then. Good. I'm going to say 2-0. I'm going to say 2-0 TSM.
Wow.
Just because I can.
All right.
Because I'm going to be that guy. But now we are going to dive into the EU LCS, where we have received a good dose of their new league format, and it has led to some pretty exciting games. But we will leave that for later, as right now, we will just run down the standings. Now remember, Europe is now split into 2 groups. So in Group A, we have G2 topping the table, followed by new standouts, Misfits, and followed up by a 3-way tie for 3rd between Giants Gaming, Rawcat, and Fnatic. In Group B, sitting pretty at the top of their group is Hard to Kill, H2K, followed by the chaotic squad we love, the Unicorns of Love, and in another 3-way tie, Vitality, Origin, and a team that was surprisingly underwhelming, Splice.
Yeah, it's Splice. Lost their first game, but I think we can give them a break. They did lose to a strong opponent. They tried out something new with the Khaled, and it didn't work out. And if we remember back to the spring split last year, we remember that Splice started out really slow, and then at the end of summer, they were looking like the best team in Europe.
Yeah, the thing is, I just don't understand kind of where it fell apart for this team. I feel like it was more pick and ban phase. Maybe Tomato Canyon hasn't had a full grasp of the pick and ban phase yet, but I also think that they will shape up as we move forward. But let's go ahead and move on to our highlighted matchups of this weekend. We're going to talk first Misfits versus G2. Now G2, the European LCS Summer Champions, coming back in. Look at that record already, 4-1, 2-0. A pretty decent gold lead at 15 minutes, 977, I think. But Misfits right up there with them at 1.50 KDA, only 0.02 behind. And the only reason they really differ in record, it's right now at least, after this morning's games, is just the fact that G2 played first and they played 2 series first.
Yeah, Misfits did improve to 2-0 this week with a solid win over a not-so-solid team in Giants, or Rockets, excuse me. Confusing my bad EU LCS teams. But I think Misfits is showing what we expected from them. They're explosive, they're fun to watch, and PoE is having a season already. Power of Evil is just showing out in the mid lane. And if Misfits were to take this series, I think that Power of Evil versus Perks mid lane matchup would have to be where the difference was made, much like with Fnatic versus G2 last week, where Caps kind of clapped Perks a few times.
I have to, well, okay, first of all, the stats about G2 and Misfits. Misfits only played 1 game last week, so, well, they only played 1 series last week, so their 2-0 record versus the 4-1 on G2 is not as if G2 performed better.
Okay.
That being said,
A smaller sample size.
yes, I feel like, that being said, I feel like Misfits will perform really well this upcoming week. I'm apprehensive to say that they'll win the series against G2 because G2, along with H2K, are looking like the stronger teams in Europe. But Misfits has a really good roster. From what I've seen of them, they have Alfari in the top lane. That guy got #1 in Korean solo queue before going back to Europe for the split. He's an extremely well-performing top laner. His CS is always higher than his opposing top laner. And then you've got like Ignar playing support who's just showing off on people. Yeah. And so I feel like regardless of who wins the series, it's going to be really close and the games are going to be really entertaining.
And let's just talk about Ignar for a second. The man is godlike on Thresh. I personally think he's going to start drawing out bans for it because it seems like he cannot miss a hook, Andy.
It doesn't matter. I'm not going to draw a Thresh ban. The support meta, I hate to burst your bubble, but the support meta just doesn't allow for that. I mean, when you have Malzahar, when you have Zyra, you have these other great supportive picks like Karma, Nami, Lulu. The list goes on, and Thresh is just lower tier. If he can continue to make it work, I'll take it back. I will formally apologize to him, but I don't believe in his ability to do that.
Let's go back to the mid lane matchup between Perks and Power of Evil. And as you said, the highlight of the matchup will be, can G2 shut down Power of Evil in the mid lane? But how do you suppose they will do that, especially with having to concern themselves about Kakao, who is a jungling monster right now on these aggressive junglers like Kha'Zix. It seems like if they try and focus Power of Evil, then Kakao might just go crazy in the side lanes and just get them a lead there.
Well, jungling is a team game, so if we're going to talk about the jungler, win your lanes and you make the enemy jungler lose. You allow your jungler to have pressure. Your lanes can go first for invades and rotations. So I think that if they're looking to attack Kakao, that's how they could do that. So by focusing Power of Evil, you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but easier said than done.
Mohammed, what do you think that G2 has to do to make sure that this upstart squad does not upset them in their first matchup against G2?
Okay, so it's kind of tricky for G2. I feel like they kind of have to focus more on their bot lane with Zen and Mithy. Those 2 are extremely strong. I'd probably give them best bot lane in Europe.
Not CLG?
Well, if CLG was in Europe, maybe I'd give them first, but unfortunately they're not. That being said, yeah, they probably would have to focus on the bot lane, I would say. If you have Power of Evil in the mid lane, they might be able to focus off the mid lane as well because of the Perks matchup against PoE. But other than that, I don't really see many outs for them. You have Kakao in the jungle and Alfari top lane, so they're going to have to play more towards mid and bot.
All right, guys, it's time to move on to the prediction stage of this matchup. Who do you have, and in how many games do you think this series goes to?
I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to go Misfits. I'm going to say Misfits and 2-0 because I think if it goes to a 3-game series that G2 will be able to pull it out with their experience. But I do think that there's a chance that if Misfits wins a close game 1, they might be able to just bust open G2 with a simple early game mistake, and G2 will just tilt and disappear.
The hot 2-0, Mohammed?
I have a lot of confidence in Misfits. I picked them for 3 different positions in my fantasy league. That being said, I don't think G2 are pushovers. So I think Misfits will clutch the win, but I don't think it's going to be a 2-0. I think it'll probably be 2-1.
All right. Okay. Well, despite my better judgment, I think I'm going to go with G2 2-1, despite my utter, not hatred, but I just don't like Perks. It's whatever. I'm going to go 2-1 G2. I think Andy's right. Their experience will help them pull it out. And I think they're going to kind of underestimate Misfits going in to the point, not underestimate their skill in each lane, but underestimate this team's ability to play great macro. We saw it this morning. Even when they got behind against Roccat, you never felt like they were behind. Yeah, the kill score was in Rockat's favor, but the gold lead never really shifted out of control of Misfits. So I'm going to take G2, but only because of veteran experience. We're going to move on to our final highlighting matchup of Europe. We're going to talk UOL versus H2K. Now, this UOL squad did come out pretty hot last week. They have the record time this split for average game time, 29.95. That's for both regions, even though their gold lead shows that they have been pretty shaky, and they showed it this morning. And then H2K at a 4-0 record right now. That KDA is amazing, 2.22, and you have to probably attribute most of that to the First Blood King, Jankos.
Yeah, the Jankos train has moved in this split, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. That dude is ballin'. And I actually think that H2K might become the best, they'll obviously be the #1 team in their group, but if we're looking at Europe as a whole, I think H2K could be considered the best team in Europe if they continue at this pace.
I have to agree with Andy on that one. With Misfits in a close second, I think that H2K, without a doubt, is probably the best team in Europe, especially with Odo Omne in the top lane. A lot of people seem to focus more on Jankos because he gets those first bloods very consistently, but Odo has been performing like a complete monster ever since Worlds, really. Pretty much known for his Jace picks during Worlds, but now he's sort of transitioning more to the tanky hybrid top laners and performing really well on those as well.
And segueing off that, I do think that that's a good point about Odo Omne's champion pool, is what I was saying earlier about the split pushers with Darshan. I think that the tank abusing meta is coming with the Rumble and the Jace and the Fiora, and Odo Omne can play all of those champions. And so if the meta shifts in that way, or it stays the way it is, which will allow for that, I think that H2K will be very strong because of what Mohammed said.
And you both are very correct. Odo Omne showing that he could carry H2K during Worlds. But also, I want to talk about the team environment now for H2K. Forgiven's gone, and although Vanner's gone, it seems like it's been working for the better because they're laughing, they're happy. Febiven's in, they're going out of the team, and I always maintain myself that H2K was almost like the European team Liquid. They just weren't dumb enough to put it into a documentary. So I think they're a lot happier. You saw them on camera smiling with each other, and I think that being a top half English and bottom half Korean team isn't bad for them because they use pings very well in communicating, and that way there's no translation lost between the two sides.
Yeah, and Jankos did say in an interview that they're not even communicating as well as they should be yet, and once they get to that level, they will most likely be unstoppable.
So we're going to move into what does UOL have to do to win this game. We know they have a new jungler named Cersei. They switched him out for Move, and he's been I don't want to say struggling, but it seems like if it's not Rumble, then it's not too good for him. He did play Ivern one game, but Ivern's not going to show up big in the stat sheets because he is a support jungler. So my main concern with them is, will he step up against H2K, and also will they show up some of the mistakes they're making? It seems like while they look polished at times, they always seem to want to fall back into that chaotic style until they get the lead, and they go back to being that polished LCS team that a lot of people and UOL fans hope to see from them. Mohammed, what's your take on their team?
I think UOL has, a lot of people don't know where to place them as a team because of the transitions that they've had. The performance that they had week 1 was pretty strong. That being said, it's really tricky to try to say whether that team is going to do well or not. They were pretty famous back when they initially started because they had Power of Evil, they had Trick, they had all these players that were really charismatic and sort of like carrying the team name. Now, maybe not so much name power on that team, but they are still performing so far. But head-to-head against H2K, it would take a miracle. It would take some self-defeating on H2K's part to lose.
Oh, you want to say something, Andy?
Well, I was just going to say, across the board, H2K is better mechanically, and they've shown superior ability macro-wise, so I don't see why H2K should lose this series.
Yeah, I agree. I think that although it's always bad to bet against the Unicorns, this time the odds are in the favor of H2K. But as we all have seen to be picking H2K, how many games do you think this series will go to? Do you think UL will make it close, or do you think H2K cleans up in a hot 2-0?
I got a 2-0.
I say 2-1 only because they performed very well week 1, and we have yet to see what teams are consistent or not, since we only have a very small sample size.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but if you didn't know, Europe started this morning with the Unicorns facing off against Origen. That ended in a 2-0 that was closer than many UOL's fans would have liked. And then Misfits played Rocket and then stomped them quite well, as was expected from most. But here is the rest of the schedule for this weekend. On Friday, it's Vitality facing Splice and Giants versus Fnatic. Then on Saturday, G2 will play Misfits in our European match of the week, right after our other highlighted match, Unicorns of Love against H2K. Finally, on Sunday, it's Misfits looking to grab an easy win against Origen, and the match that nobody is waiting for, Giants clashing against Rocket. But you know what? That's going to wrap it up for us here at PrimeTime Esports. Make sure to follow us on Facebook at PrimeTime Esports. There's no space between that. On Twitter at PTE Esports with a Z, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, GSTV Primetime Sports, that is also with a Z, where you can find our Primetime Esports playlist. From us, you all have a great weekend and enjoy the LCS.